She was just a poor village girl, unknown, unnoticed, and struggling to survive. But one ordinary afternoon on her way back from the market, she made a decision that would change her destiny forever. She stopped to help a lonely old woman carrying firewood. Not knowing the entire village feared her, not knowing people whispered she was cursed, not knowing this fragile stranger held a secret big enough to transform her life. What happened next will shock you and inspire you. Before we begin, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss our emotional and life-changing stories. Let's dive in. The first rays of dawn crept gently across the village of Umuaka, casting a soft golden glow over the red earth paths and the scattered mud houses that dotted the landscape like ancient guardians. The morning was still young, roosters crowed in several compounds, palm fronds swayed lazily above the roofs, and smoke rose from early cooking fires. But in a small, humble compound near the edge of the village, one girl had already been awake long before the sun. Her name was Esther. She moved quietly but purposefully, her bare feet brushing against the cool floor as she swept the small room she shared with her mother and younger brother. Though poverty wrapped itself around their lives like a stubborn shadow, Esther had learned long ago that a clean home brought peace, even where comfort was scarce. Her mother, Mama Chinyere, sat on a low stool outside, peeling cassava with slow, tired hands. She had known far too much suffering for one lifetime, widowed early, left with two children to raise alone, but she carried her pain with dignity. Whenever anyone asked how she survived each day, she always said, "God strengthens the bones of a widow." When Esther emerged from the house carrying a short broom, Mama Chinyere looked up and smiled faintly. "My daughter, you woke early again." Esther returned the smile with her usual gentle warmth. "Mama, the day will not wait for us. Let me finish before the sun grows hot." As she swept the compound, her mind wandered. Today was market day, the day they hoped to sell enough vegetables to buy kerosene, soap, and maybe a small treat for her brother Chima, who had been craving groundnut for weeks. Their lives depended on what they sold. Every naira mattered. Chima stumbled out of the house, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Ada M," he called softly. "Good morning." "Good morning, Chima," Esther replied, reaching out to smooth his rumpled shirt. "Go and wash your face. I'll make something small for us to eat." He nodded sleepily and wandered toward the clay pot that held their drinking water. Inside their tiny kitchen, a corner space constructed with bamboo sticks, Esther poured a little akamu into a pot and mixed it with water. It wasn't much, and it wouldn't fill their stomachs, but she made do with what they had. As the pap warmed over the small fire, she added a pinch of sugar, an act of sacrifice because sugar was a luxury they rarely indulged in. "Here," she said, handing her mother a bowl. "Eat before you continue working." Mama Chinyere shook her head. "No, my daughter. You and Chima should eat. You need strength for the market." "Mama, please," Esther insisted, pushing the bowl toward her gently. "If you don't eat, how will you manage today?" Her mother finally accepted, though she took only a few spoonfuls before sliding the bowl back to Esther. After they ate, Esther began gathering vegetables from the garden behind their house. Fresh ugu leaves, ripe tomatoes, fresh peppers, okra, and a few bunches of scent leaf. She rinsed them in a basin, arranging them neatly into a woven basket. Chima watched her with wide, admiring eyes. "One day I will make money and build you a big shop," he said proudly. She laughed softly and stroked his cheek. "And I will be proud of you, my brother." When everything was ready, Esther wrapped her faded blue scarf around her hair, adjusted her wrapper, and lifted the basket onto her head with practiced ease. She looked at her mother one more time. "Mama, I'm going." Mama Chinyere reached out and placed both hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Esther," she began quietly, "you are my blessing. You do everything without complaint. May God reward your kindness with good things." "Amen, Mama," she whispered. As she stepped out into the morning sun, the cool breeze brushed her face, carrying the scent of dew and distant cooking smoke. The path to the market stretched before her, narrow, winding, and familiar. It was a path she had walked for years, yet it never felt the same. Some days were good, some were disappointing, but she faced each day with the same determination. Along the way, she greeted everyone she met. "Good morning, Papa Nana." "Esther, safe journey." "Nwanyi Oma, May your market favor you today. Esther smiled at each greeting, her heart warming. Despite the poverty, there was beauty in village life, in the laughter of children playing with makeshift toys, in the rhythmic pounding of fufu from distant compounds, in the rustle of palm leaves swaying in the gentle breeze. She walked past farmlands where early farmers bent over their hoes, planting and weeding. Some waved at her, others simply nodded. Esther was well loved in Umuaka, not because of wealth or beauty, but because she carried a softness that touched people before her words even did. Her humility, her helpfulness, her willingness to smile even when life broke her in quiet ways. These made her unforgettable. But beneath her calm exterior, Esther often carried silent worries. She wondered if her mother would ever stop waking in pain from the arthritis that bent her once straight back. She wondered if her father would have been proud of her had he lived. She wondered if Chima would finish school or be forced to abandon his education because she couldn't support him alone. She carried all these burdens, yet she walked with a quiet grace that made others think she had no worries at all. When she reached the junction where the path widened into the main road, she paused for a brief moment. The road ahead led to the marketplace, but something tugged at her spirit, a feeling she couldn't name. She took a deep breath and started walking again. The sun had risen higher now, bathing the village in warm light. Esther adjusted her basket and walked on, unaware of what awaited her just beyond the bend. Just beyond that bend, a moment was coming, a moment that would alter the rhythm of her life, a moment that would connect her destiny with that of a lonely old woman and a billionaire on the other side of the world, a moment born from kindness, a moment that would change everything. But for now, Esther simply walked, her heart pure, her steps steady, her future waiting silently in the shadows. The sun had risen higher now, warming the red earth road that led toward Umuaka Market. Esther walked with steady steps, her basket balanced gracefully on her head. The morning breeze rustled the leaves of the mango trees lining the path, and birds darted above her in quick, playful movements. The village was fully awake, farmers calling to one another, women heading to the stream, children running with tin cans tied to strings. Esther greeted everyone she met, her smile bright, even though her mind was occupied with thoughts of the day. Market days were unpredictable. Sometimes she sold everything. Sometimes she returned home with nearly half her goods still in the basket. But she always hoped, always believed that each day carried its own blessing. She had just reached the familiar bend where the narrow path widened into the main road when she slowed her pace. Something ahead caught her attention. Something unusual. Something that made her heart tug. An old woman was struggling under a heavy bundle of firewood. The sticks were tied together in a thick bunch, resting on her stooped back. She trembled with each step, her bare feet sinking into the dust. Her wrapper was faded, patched at the edges, and her gray hair peeked from beneath a worn headscarf. She clutched a small nylon bag in one hand, leaning heavily on it for balance. Esther paused, watching. A motorcycle sped past, raising dust. A group of boys followed soon after, laughing loudly as they played. A woman carrying plantain balanced skillfully on her head walked by, glancing briefly at the old woman before continuing on her way. No one stopped. No one offered help. The old woman's breathing grew louder, more strained, yet still she pushed forward, as though she had become used to suffering alone. Esther's chest tightened. She considered walking on. She had vegetables to sell. She needed to reach the market early. Her family depended on the money, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the old woman's shaking legs, her bent back, her quiet struggle. Esther took a step forward, then hesitated. What if market becomes slow today, she thought. Mama's expecting me to return with enough money. Chima's school fees, kerosene, food. She looked again at the woman. At that exact moment, the woman stumbled. The firewood shifted dangerously. She gasped, gripping her nylon bag to stop herself from falling. Esther felt something inside her snap, an invisible thread pulling her forward. She dropped her basket gently on the roadside and walked quickly toward the old woman. "Mama," she called softly, "please let me help you." The old woman turned her head slightly. Her face was lined, tired, but her eyes were sharp. "No, my daughter," she said weakly. "Don't worry, I can manage. You are going to market. Carry on. I don't want to disturb you." Esther shook her head. Mama, you are tired. This load is too heavy. Please allow me. The woman blinked, still confused, still hesitant. People don't stop for me, she whispered. They say I should not trouble anyone. That is not right, Esther replied gently. Let me carry it. After a long moment, the old woman nodded. Esther stepped behind her and slowly untied the rope binding the firewood. The weight surprised her. It was heavier than she had expected, rough and uneven. The sharp edges scratched her arms, but she tightened her grip and balanced the bundle against her hip. Mama, where is your house? Esther asked, trying to steady her breathing. Not far, the old woman said. Follow me. They walked slowly down a narrow path that branched off from the main road. Tall grass brushed against Esther's legs as she shifted the firewood to her head. The path wound around plantain trees and small farms until it opened into a lonely clearing. There, standing alone, was a small mud house. The walls were cracked. The zinc roof sagged slightly. No children played in the compound. No neighbor's voice echoed nearby. Only silence lived there. Esther swallowed. You stay here? She asked softly. Yes, the old woman said. Put the firewood behind the house where I cook. Esther carried the load around the side and lowered it carefully onto the ground near the three-stone cooking fireplace. She stretched her arms, wincing at the stinging scratches, then returned to the front of the house. The old woman watched her with an expression Esther could not fully read, gratitude mixed with disbelief. You are kind, the woman said quietly. Very kind. What is your name? My name is Esther. Esther, she repeated slowly. A good name. A name God remembers. Esther smiled shyly. Mama, let me go back for my basket before someone takes it. The woman nodded. Thank you, my daughter. May God bless your steps. Esther turned to leave but hesitated. Something urged her to speak again. Mama, she said gently, if I pass this way tomorrow, I will check on you. The old woman looked startled. You will come back? Yes, Esther said. If you need water, I can fetch. If you need help cooking or carrying something, I can assist. For a moment, the old woman's eyes shone with a brightness Esther did not expect. She clasped her hands together. Go well, my daughter, she whispered. The road will not forget your kindness. Esther walked back toward the main road, retrieved her basket, and hurried toward the market. Dust rose beneath her feet as she walked. She didn't know people would talk. She didn't know her kindness would stir whispers and rumors. She didn't know this moment had already woven her into a story older than she imagined. All she knew was that she couldn't walk past someone suffering, and that simple choice was the beginning of everything. The market was already alive when Esther arrived. Voices rose in every direction, traders calling out prices, customers bargaining loudly, babies crying on their mothers' backs. The clatter of basins shifting on wooden tables. The air carried a mix of smells, fresh tomatoes, dried fish, palm oil, and the sweat of hardworking villagers under the morning sun. Esther quickly spread her mat in her usual corner and arranged her vegetables neatly. But even as she worked, her mind wandered back to the old woman, the weight of the firewood, the loneliness around her home, the gratitude in her eyes when Esther promised to return. She barely noticed the stares until she heard someone call loudly, Esther, so you have become friends with the witch? Her head snapped up. 3 young women standing near the pepper stall were staring directly at her. They whispered among themselves, their mouths curling into amused smirks. Witch? Esther repeated quietly, unsure she heard correctly. Mama Nkechi, an older trader selling vegetables beside her, sighed heavily. My daughter, I warned you. People have started talking. Esther frowned. Talking about what? About the woman you helped yesterday, Mama Nkechi said. People say she is a witch. They say she eats the destiny of anyone who comes close. Esther blinked in disbelief. Mama, how can they say something like that? She is just a lonely old woman struggling on her own. Another woman selling okra leaned forward. Whether lonely or not, something about her is not normal. For years, she has lived alone. No visitors, no relatives. No one knows where she came from, and anyone who tried to help her, misfortune followed them. That's not true, Esther insisted. Did you see the misfortune with your own eyes, or did someone just tell you? The okra seller hesitated. Well, people talk. People always talk, Esther murmured, but the whispers around her were growing. A young man buying tomatoes asked loudly, "Are you not afraid? You even entered her compound?" Two older women gasped dramatically. "Entered her compound? Ah, Esther, your boldness is something else." Someone behind her muttered, "This girl wants to spoil her destiny." A few customers avoided her stall entirely, walking quickly past her as if fear was contagious. Esther felt something tighten in her chest. She kept arranging her vegetables calmly, but her hands trembled slightly. Why are they treating her like this, she thought. Why are they treating me like this too? She tried to focus on selling, but business moved slower than usual. Some people bought from her out of habit, but others pointedly avoided her table, pretending not to see her. Even familiar customers kept their distance. When the crowd thinned toward afternoon, Mama Nkechi leaned closer. "My daughter," she said gently, "I know you have a good heart, but in this village, good hearts sometimes suffer. Be careful." "I didn't do anything wrong," Esther replied quietly. "No," Mama Nkechi agreed, "but people fear what they don't understand." Esther finished selling what she could. When she counted her money, she sighed. She had sold far less than she usually did. Today's earnings wouldn't cover half of what her mother needed. As she tied the ends of her wrapper tightly around her waist, she felt frustration burn in her chest. Why should helping someone cause trouble? Why should kindness be punished? She walked home with slow, heavy steps, dust clinging to her slippers. At the junction where the paths split, one road leading home, the other leading to the old woman's area, Esther stopped. The villagers' whispers echoed in her mind. Witch. Bad luck. Misfortune. She closed her eyes. Then she remembered the trembling shoulders of the old woman, the relief on her face, the loneliness surrounding her broken house. Esther opened her eyes and turned toward the narrow footpath. Whatever the village believed, she knew what she had seen, a woman in need. When she reached the clearing, she found the old woman sitting outside her mud house, peeling cassava slowly into a bowl. Her hands shook slightly. Her shoulders drooped like branches bent by years of storms. "Mama," Esther said softly. The woman looked up. A small smile spread across her wrinkled face. "Esther, you came." "I said I would," Esther replied. She set down her basket, tightened her wrapper tighter, and knelt beside the woman. "Let me help you." "You don't mind?" the woman asked quietly. "People avoid me. They say I carry bad luck." "I don't believe that," Esther answered without hesitation. The old woman blinked and swallowed hard. She passed the cassava to Esther, who began peeling with quick, practiced motions. They worked quietly for a moment, the air warm but peaceful. Then the woman spoke again. "You are a rare child, Esther. Most people cross the road when they see me." Esther glanced at her gently. "Why, what did you do to them?" The woman gave a bitter smile. "Sometimes you don't need to do anything. People create their own stories when they don't know the truth." Esther nodded slowly. She felt the weight of those words. They finished peeling. Esther washed the cassava, fetched water from the clay pot, swept the front of the house, and even helped light the fire behind the house. When everything was done, she sat on the low wooden bench beside the old woman. "Mama," she asked softly, "why do you live alone? Don't you have children?" The woman's hands froze. Her eyes clouded immediately, as if someone had cracked open an old wound. "I don't want to talk about my children," she whispered. Esther regretted asking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." The old woman patted her hand weakly. "You meant well, but my story is heavy." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the smell of burning firewood. After a moment, the old woman spoke again, her voice trembling. "But maybe one day, I will tell you. Not today." Esther nodded with understanding. "Whenever you're ready." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, Esther stood to leave. "I will come again tomorrow," she said. The old woman looked up at her, eyes shining with gratitude. "God sent you to me, Esther, whether you know it or not." Esther smiled softly, but as she walked back toward the main road, she couldn't shake one uneasy thought. Why does everyone fear her? And deep in the shadows of the trees, Destiny watched quietly, waiting. The days that followed were the hardest Esther had experienced in a long time. Every morning she woke early, swept the compound, cooked for her mother and brother, and prepared her basket for the market. On the surface, nothing had changed, but the atmosphere around her had shifted. Eyes followed her more sharply. Whispers rose behind her. Conversations paused whenever she walked past. The first sign came when she reached her usual selling spot. Two women who normally greeted her cheerfully changed their positions just to avoid sitting near her. One even moved her basin entirely, muttering something about bad luck under her breath. Esther pretended not to hear, but the words sank deep into her heart like hidden thorns. Within an hour, the rumor spread further. "That girl now visits the witch every day," someone said at the Gary stall. "Me, I will never buy vegetables from her again," another declared loudly. "Children, don't go near her table," an older woman warned, pulling her little daughter away. Esther sat quietly, her hands neatly arranging tomatoes she knew many people would no longer buy. She kept her face calm, even though her chest felt tight. It wasn't the lack of sales that hurt the most. It was the way everyone now treated her as if she was something to fear. A young woman approached to buy peppers but hesitated when she saw Esther. "Ah, is it you?" she whispered. "Sorry, let me buy from the other side." Esther felt the rejection like a slap. She swallowed hard and continued arranging her wares. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered to herself. "I only helped someone who needed help." Mama and Nkechi, who had watched silently for a while, finally scooted closer to her. "My daughter, don't let their words trouble your spirit," she said gently. "People fear what they don't understand. Sometimes good people suffer for doing good." Esther forced a smile. "Mama, why do they treat her like this? She is just an old woman living alone." Mama and Nkechi sighed heavily. Fear can turn even gentle hearts into stones. Once a rumor begins, truth becomes too weak to fight it. Customers continued to avoid her, and when the sun reached its highest point, she had sold only a quarter of her vegetables. Normally by midday, her basket would almost be empty. Today, her purse held only a few rumpled Naira notes. "God help me," she murmured quietly. When it was time to pack up, her steps were slower. Each movement felt heavier than the last. She tied her wrapper tightly, lifted her half-full basket, and began walking home. But at the junction where the road forked, she stopped. The left path led home. The right path led to Mama Grace. The villagers' warnings echoed in her mind, but the image of the old woman, alone, frail, grateful, echoed louder. Esther closed her eyes for a moment, then turned right. When she reached the clearing, she heard coughing from behind the mud house. She hurried toward the sound. Mama Grace was bent over, struggling to breathe after trying to chop firewood. "Mama!" Esther rushed toward her. "You shouldn't be doing this." The old woman tried to straighten. "I didn't think you would come today." "I told you I would," Esther replied, helping her sit on a wooden stool. Mama Grace smiled weakly, her eyes filled with something soft. "People don't keep promises to me anymore. You are different." Esther set down her basket and immediately began arranging the scattered pieces of firewood. She swept the cooking area, fetched water from the clay pot, and washed the old woman's plates. As she worked, she felt a strange peace settle around her. Despite the village's cruelty, this place calmed her. When she returned to sit beside Mama Grace, the old woman watched her silently for a long moment. "Esther," she said quietly, "do people trouble you because of me?" Esther looked down, picking at her fingernails. "They talk. Too much. They say things about you. And because I come here, they say things about me too." Mama Grace lowered her head. "I am sorry. You shouldn't suffer for knowing me." "You didn't do anything wrong," Esther replied quickly. "People just don't understand you." The old woman's eyes glistened. "But you never asked me why I live alone. You never asked me why everyone avoids me." "I asked once," Esther admitted softly. "But you said the story was heavy, and I didn't want to open any wound." Mama Grace wiped a tear quietly. "You have a gentle soul, my daughter. A soul like that is rare in this world." For a moment, silence settled between them, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant echo of evening birds. Then Mama Grace continued, her voice trembling. "People think I am a witch. They think I chased my children away. They think I brought curses upon myself. But none of that is true." Esther listened quietly, her heart already breaking for a story she hadn't heard yet. I once lived in another village, the old woman said, a bigger place, full of jealous hearts. I had a son, my only child. He was brilliant, kind, and determined to succeed. He went abroad to study. People grew angry. They believed his success meant I had taken something from them. They lied, Esther whispered. They did, Mama Grace nodded, and their lies spread like fire. By the time my son left for America, the village had turned against me. I fled here to protect myself and to wait for him. I have been waiting for many years. Esther's throat tightened. Mama, I am so sorry. Mama Grace squeezed her hand weakly. You are the first person in a long time who saw me as human. The sun dipped low, casting soft orange light across the clearing. As Esther prepared to leave, Mama Grace looked up at her with trembling gratitude. You are a child God sent to me, she whispered. Your kindness will not end in vain. Esther walked home with tears in her eyes. And somewhere deep within her spirit, something whispered, this story is far from over. For nearly a week, Esther continued her visits to Mama Grace's lonely mud house. Each day brought a deeper connection between them, an unexpected bond formed by kindness, suffering, and a shared understanding of how cruel the world could be. Esther listened to the old woman's stories, helped her cook, cleaned her compound, and made sure she ate well. And with each passing day, Mama Grace's frail smile grew a little warmer, a little less haunted. But the gossip in Umuaka also grew louder. Esther is now the witch's apprentice, one woman said loudly at the market. I heard her destiny will soon be swallowed, another whispered. Some refused to buy from her entirely, and even children ran off whenever she approached. It stung more than she allowed herself to admit, but each time doubt crept into her heart. She remembered the way Mama Grace's hands trembled when she lifted pots alone, the emptiness of her compound, and the loneliness that lingered in her eyes. That kept Esther going. It was on the seventh day, hot, dusty, and unusually quiet, that everything changed. Esther had finished her market early because sales were so poor. She decided to buy a small piece of fish for Mama Grace since the old woman rarely had protein to eat. She wrapped it carefully in a leaf, placed it in her basket, and walked toward the familiar footpath. When she reached the clearing, she froze. A black SUV, new, shiny, and far too expensive for a village like Umuaka, was parked directly in front of the mud house. Its engine was off, but its presence commanded attention. It looked almost surreal, like a piece of a distant world mistakenly dropped into this forgotten corner of the village. Esther's heart pounded. Who could this belong to? Before she could move, she heard voices from inside the compound. Mama, Mama, where are you? A man called urgently. His voice was deep, firm, and carried an accent Esther had never heard before, smooth, polished, and foreign. She took a hesitant step closer. The front door of the mud house swung open, and a tall, well-dressed man emerged. He was in his early 30s, perhaps, with a well-trimmed beard and broad shoulders. He wore designer shoes and a fitted shirt. His wristwatch alone could feed 10 families in Umuaka for months. His entire presence screamed wealth, confidence, and education. But his eyes were filled with worry. Mama, he called again, stepping forward. At that moment, Mama Grace appeared from behind the house, wiping her hands on her wrapper. She looked stunned, frozen in disbelief. My son? She whispered. The man's face lit with both relief and heartbreak. Mama! He rushed toward her and knelt, wrapping his arms around her trembling body. Esther stood at a distance, stunned, unsure whether to move or disappear. Mama, why didn't you tell me? He said, pulling back to look into her face. Why didn't you tell me you were living like this? Mama Grace's eyes overflowed immediately. My son, I waited. I waited for you, but I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to hold you back. He held her hands tightly, shaking his head. A burden? Mama, you're my mother. No one replaces you. No one. Esther watched quietly, her chest swelling with emotion. She had always suspected Mama Grace's story carried pain, but she never imagined this. You succeeded, Mama Grace whispered. You became everything we prayed for. Yes, he said softly, but it means nothing if you are suffering. His eyes flicked around the compound, at the cracked walls, the patched roof, the empty yard. Who did this to you? He asked, his voice tightening. Who abandoned you here? Mama Grace shook her head. People can be cruel, but God sent me someone. She turned slowly and pointed at Esther. The man followed her gaze. Their eyes locked. For a moment, he simply stared, first in confusion, then in surprise, and finally in something softer. Mama, who is she? He asked quietly. Mama Grace's lips trembled with emotion. The only person who has cared for me in years. The only one who saw me, not as a witch, not as a curse, but as a human being. She carried firewood to this compound. She cooked for me, cleaned for me, sat with me, prayed with me. Esther felt her cheeks heat. Mama, please. Mama Grace ignored her. She is the child God used to keep me alive. The man turned fully to Esther now, his eyes deep and searching. He stepped closer. Thank you, he said, his voice steady but emotional. I don't even know your name, but thank you for saving my mother. Her name is Esther, Mama Grace said proudly. She has a pure heart. Esther lowered her gaze. I only did what anyone should do. Not anyone, the man replied firmly. No one else helped her. You did. The wind shifted, carrying a soft rustle through the clearing. What's your name, sir? Esther finally asked. He straightened slightly. My name is Daniel Chukwuma. Esther blinked. That name, she had heard it somewhere. Chukwuma, a powerful surname, a wealthy family. Daniel smiled faintly at her recognition. Yes, I am the Daniel people write about, the one who left for America very young. My businesses are in the US, Europe, and Abuja now. I came home because I received a letter telling me my mother might not be alive. Mama Grace squeezed his arm. But I am alive. And she pointed at Esther again, is the reason I survived long enough to see you return. Daniel's gaze softened into something warm, something grateful, something Esther couldn't quite name. He took a step closer to her. Esther, he said quietly, you don't know it yet, but you have changed this family forever. His words sent a strange flutter through her chest. Mama Grace smiled through tears. My son, she said, wiping her eyes. This is the girl I told you God would send. Daniel looked at Esther again, and this time she saw it clearly. Her life was no longer the same. The days that followed Daniel's return were unlike anything the village of Umwaka had ever seen. Word spread faster than wildfire. The witch of the mud house was not a witch at all, but the mother of a billionaire. Those who once mocked Mama Grace now avoided her compound out of shame. Some even attempted to visit with fake smiles and bowls of food, hoping to rewrite their history with kindness they never offered. But Mama Grace accepted none of it. My heart remembers who stood beside me, she said quietly, and who stood far away. Esther visited as she always did, without expectation, without fear. But now there was a new presence in the house. Daniel, he hired workers to renovate the entire place. Within days, the cracked walls were patched, the roof replaced, and the compound transformed. Yet even as wealth surrounded the mud house, Daniel often sat outside with his mother, listening to her stories, making up for years of absence. And Esther continued to help, though Mama Grace insisted she rest. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Daniel walked up to Esther while she swept the compound. You don't have to do that, he said gently. Esther smiled. Old habits die slowly, sir. Call me Daniel, he said softly. She laughed lightly, lowering her eyes. Okay, Daniel. I've watched you these past days, he began. You're humble, hardworking, and you have taken care of the most important person in my life. Esther shook her head. I didn't do anything special. Daniel stepped closer. You did everything special. When everyone abandoned her, you didn't. When others mocked, you comforted. When they called her names, you fed her. My mother is alive because of you, and I can never repay you. Esther swallowed. Your mother means a lot to me. She means everything to me, Daniel said softly. And now, so do you. Her heart skipped a beat. Daniel exhaled deeply as if steadying himself. Esther, you may not see it, but your kindness changed all our lives. I don't want to leave this village again. Not without you. Esther's breath caught. Without me? Yes, he said, his voice firm yet gentle. Esther, I want to marry you. For a moment, silence wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Esther stared at him, stunned. Marriage to a man like Daniel? The thought seemed impossible, like a dream too big for her hands. But I am just a village girl, she whispered at last. I have nothing. No wealth, no education, no. You have the one thing money can't buy, Daniel interrupted. A pure heart. She blinked back sudden tears. Daniel, are you sure? Don't say this out of gratitude. This isn't gratitude, he said firmly. It's love. Real love. The kind that grows from admiration and respect. At that moment, Mama Grace's voice floated from behind them. My daughter, why are you crying? Esther turned quickly, wiping her cheeks. Mama, he said, I asked her to marry me, Daniel said proudly. Mama Grace smiled knowingly. I prayed for this day. God answers in his time. Esther stared at them, overwhelmed. Mama, you are okay with this? Mama Grace took her hands gently. My son is a billionaire. But wealth is not everything. Your heart is bigger than fortunes. You gave me love when I had nothing. You treated me like a mother. Why wouldn't I want you as my daughter-in-law? Esther broke down, crying, covering her face. Mama Grace hugged her tightly. The village buzzed with excitement and jealousy when news spread the next morning. Some women murmured bitterly, how can Esther be the one? She's nobody. But others whispered in awe, kindness truly has reward. Within a month, preparations were underway. Daniel insisted on handling every detail. A wedding planner came from the city. Tailors arrived to measure Esther for gowns more beautiful than she had ever imagined. Mama Grace remained by her side, guiding her, loving her, reassuring her. You deserve all of this, she said often. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The once quiet field beside Mama Grace's house had been transformed into a breathtaking venue. White tents, gold chairs, flowers in elegant vases, and soft music playing from well-polished speakers. Cars lined the village road as visitors came from near and far. Esther stepped out of the house in her white wedding gown. It flowed around her like a river of grace. Her hair was styled neatly, adorned with tiny pearls. Her face glowed, not from makeup, but from pure joy. Mama Chinyere cried the moment she saw her daughter. My God, Esther, my child, look at you. Esther held her mother tightly. Mama, God has remembered us. The ceremony began. Daniel stood at the altar, dressed in a crisp white suit, looking at Esther with an expression that could melt stone. When she walked toward him, guided by her mother, the entire crowd turned silent. It felt like watching a miracle unfold. When Esther reached him, Daniel took her hands gently. You turned my world right side up, he whispered. And you changed mine, she replied softly. The pastor spoke, prayers rose, and vows were exchanged. When they kissed, the village erupted in cheers. Drums played, dancers filled the space, and joy flowed like water. During the reception, Mama Grace stood and tapped her glass gently. Everyone, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. For many years I lived alone, forgotten, abandoned. But one girl, just one, saw me as a mother. Esther restored my hope. Today, God has lifted her higher than her enemies imagined. May this marriage be blessed forever. The crowd applauded. Daniel wrapped an arm around Esther. Welcome to your new life, my queen. Esther smiled through tears. Once a poor village girl, now the wife of a billionaire, all because she stopped to help an old woman carrying firewood. Moral of the story. True kindness never goes unrewarded. What you do in secret, God sees in the open. Esther's life changed not through beauty, wealth, or opportunity, but through compassion. When you help others without expecting anything in return, you plant seeds of blessings that will one day return to you in ways you least expect. Never judge people by rumors. The person the world rejects may be your greatest destiny connection. Thank you so much for watching this emotional story. Esther's life reminds us that kindness is never wasted, and every good deed is a seed that will one day grow into an unexpected blessing. Do you believe that helping others can change your destiny? Tell us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another powerful and inspiring story on this channel. See you in the next one.